I worked 2 jobs to put her through med school. The day she graduated, she said, "I've outgrown you." So I took my half of the savings and bought a cabin. Her attending physician just fired her for unprofessional conduct. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. The ache in my lower back was a familiar friend, a constant reminder of the 8 hours I'd spent bent over legal files, cross-referencing clauses for a partner who wouldn't know my name if I handed him a business card with it written in Sharpie. The thrum in my feet was newer, a gift from the 5-hour shift I'd just finished at the bar, pouring craft IPAs for guys in quarter zips who talked too loud about their equity. I leaned against the cool glass of the display case, waiting. The sharp, sweet smell of sugar and fondant filled the air. "Here you go, Mark," Maria said, her voice warm as she slid the box across the counter. "She's gonna love it." I managed a tired smile. "I hope so. I'd commissioned it a month ago." In elegant, looping script of blue and silver icing, it read, "Dr. Chloe. We did it." The we was important. It had always been a we thing. The memory hit me as I buckled the cake box into the passenger seat of my 10-year-old Corolla, treating it with more care than I'd treat a human child. It was from our second year of undergrad, sitting on the floor of her dorm room, eating lukewarm ramen. "It's impossible," she'd sighed, her head on my shoulder, a heavy organic chemistry textbook open in her lap. "Med school is a myth for people like us. My parents can't afford it. Yours can't either." I'd wrapped my arm around her, pulling her close. Her ambition was a bright, fierce thing, and the thought of it dimming was unbearable. "Hey," I'd said, my voice firm. "Look at me. I've got you. You're going to be an amazing doctor. I'll carry the weight. You just carry the books. Deal?" She'd looked up, her eyes shiny with unshed tears, and nodded. "Deal." I carried the weight. I took the paralegal job for the steady hours and mediocre health insurance. I took the bartending gig for the cash tips that went straight into the Qley's future savings account, a fund that paid for MCAT prep courses, application fees, and eventually, the brutal tuition itself. We'd moved into a tiny apartment that smelled vaguely of stale curry from the neighbors downstairs, and I called it home because she was in it. My life became a Venn diagram of 2 jobs, laundry, meal prepping for her brutal study sessions, and trying to remember what my own hobbies had once been. It was a grind, a blur of exhaustion and financial anxiety. But it was our dream. And every time she aced an exam, every time she came home with a story from her rotations, her face alight with passion, the ache in my back felt worth it. She was the investment. Our future was the return. Today was the payoff. Graduation day. After the cake, I stopped at a liquor store I usually just walked past, the kind with actual wooden floors. I bought a bottle of Dom Perignon that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. The cork was a promise of celebration. The cake was a monument to our struggle. I was so damn proud of her. Of us. I pushed open the door to our apartment at a little after 7, my arms full of our future. "Qley, you home?" The ceremony was supposed to be over hours ago. Silence. The apartment was dark, the blinds still drawn. A knot of confusion tightened in my stomach. I'd pictured her here, still in her cap and gown, maybe surrounded by a few friends, ready to pop the champagne. I set the cake and the bottle carefully on the kitchen counter and flipped on the light. The place was exactly as I'd left it this morning. My cereal bowl still in the sink, the couch cushions dented from where I'd passed out for 3 precious hours between jobs. No cap, no gown, no Qley. An hour later, the key turned in the lock. I was on the couch, the cake box open on the coffee table, the bottle standing sentinel beside it. I stood up, a smile ready on my face. It died the second I saw her. She wasn't in her graduation regalia. She was wearing a sleek, black dress I'd never seen before, the kind that cost more than our monthly electric bill. Her makeup was flawless, her hair styled in soft waves. She looked incredible, and she looked at the cake, the champagne, and then at me, with an expression that wasn't joy or surprise. It was something closer to pity and disdain. "Mark," she said, her voice cool and measured. It was her, "I'm a doctor, listen to me" voice. She'd been practicing it lately. "We need to talk. Sit down." The knot in my stomach turned to lead. I slowly lowered myself back onto the couch. She remained standing, a prosecutor before the jury. She gestured vaguely toward the kitchen counter. Look at all this. It's sweet. Really, it's a very sweet gesture. But it's just a symbol of everything that's wrong. I just stared, my mind scrambling for purchase. Wrong? Qley, it's your graduation day. We're supposed to celebrate. Where were you? She ignored the question. I've outgrown this, Mark. I've outgrown this apartment, this life. I've outgrown us. The words didn't make sense. They were just sounds, loud and sharp, like glass shattering on tile. I heard them, but my brain refused to assemble them into a meaning that fit the reality of the last 7 years. What are you talking about? My voice sounded hollow, distant. You're still here, she said, her tone softening into something infinitely more cruel, condescension. In this tiny apartment, working 2 dead-end jobs. My world is expanding. I'm a doctor now. I need to be with someone who is already where I'm going, not someone who is still here. She said here, like it was a contagious disease. Who? The word was a croak. Someone who? A faint, almost smug smile touched her lips. Dr. Evans. My attending physician. He understands the pressure, the prestige. The life I'm meant to have. He moves in the circles I belong in now. Dr. Evans. I'd heard the name. Mid-40s. Charming. Divorced. Drove an Audi that cost more than my life's cumulative earnings. She took a step closer, but it wasn't a gesture of comfort. It was a closing statement. It's not your fault. You're a good man. A really good man. You're just financially boring. You play it safe. You always have. I need more. I deserve more. Financially boring. The phrase echoed in the silent room. The years of skipped lunches, of patched jeans, of saying, maybe next month, to any vacation, of taking on the second job so she wouldn't have to. It all crystallized into that one, devastatingly shallow insult. My sacrifice was my failure. My stability was my dullness. I looked at her, really looked. I searched her face for the girl who ate ramen on the dorm room floor, for the woman who cried with relief in my arms when her acceptance letter came. I saw only a stranger, her eyes bright with a cold, newfound entitlement. I didn't say a word. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't ask how she could do this. I didn't remind her of the promises, of the weight I carried so she could fly. The anger, the betrayal, the sheer catastrophic unfairness of it all. It was a supernova going off inside my chest, but I let none of it show. I just sat there, utterly still, and absorbed the annihilation of my life with a quiet dignity I didn't know I possessed. My silence unnerved her. She'd expected a fight. She'd prepared for tears and begging. She'd wanted a dramatic scene to justify her exit. My calm, empty stare was a script she couldn't read. She cleared her throat, the sound too loud in the quiet room. I'm going to stay at Sarah's tonight. I'll come get my things later this week. She turned and walked out, the click of the door echoing in the emptiness she left behind. I sat there for a long time, staring at the cake. The blue and silver icing gleamed under the cheap kitchen light, a monument to a dream that had just been revealed as a lie. The we was a joke, and I was the punchline. The click of the door was the period at the end of our story. The silence that followed was absolute, heavier than any noise. I sat on the couch, not moving, until the streetlights outside cast long, distorted shadows of the cake box across the room. There was no explosion of grief, no screaming fit, just a cold, settling clarity. The kind that comes when you realize the person you trusted with your life has been secretly measuring you for a coffin. I stood up. My body felt like it belonged to someone else. I walked to the kitchen, opened the trash can, and looked at the beautiful, stupid cake. I couldn't bring myself to destroy it. It wasn't hers to destroy anymore. It was evidence of my own blindness. I left it on the counter. I went to the bedroom. Her side of the closet was a riot of color and new clothes, things I hadn't seen before. My side was a sparse collection of functional wear. The metaphor was too obvious to be painful. It was just a fact. I found a single duffel bag in the top of the closet and laid it on the bed. I didn't pack sentiment. I packed utility. Jeans, t-shirts, my good suit for court, socks, underwear. My shaving kit. The small lockbox that held my passport, my social security card, and the few pieces of my father's jewelry. That was it. Everything else was a relic of a life that was now a lie. I took my personal laptop and sat at the small desk we shared. The first call was to my landlord, a decent guy named Frank. It was late, but he answered. Frank. Mark. Yeah, sorry to call so late. I need to break my lease. Effective immediately. I know the policy, keep the security deposit. Consider it my penalty. I'll be out by tomorrow afternoon, and my key will be in the mailbox. You can list it right away. Frank was quiet for a second. Everything all right, Mark? No, I said, my voice flat. But it will be. Thanks for everything, Frank. I hung up. Next, I logged into our joint banking account. For 7 years, this screen had been a source of both pride and anxiety. The number represented every ounce of sweat, every missed hour of sleep, every dollar scrimped and saved for her future. Our future. I calculated the total. $47,812.33. I divided it by 2. $23,906.16. With a few clicks, I initiated a transfer of exactly that amount into my personal savings account. I left her half. I didn't take a penny more. I wasn't a thief. I was a settling of accounts. I went through our shared life online, methodically severing the ties. I removed myself from the shared Netflix account, the Hulu, the Amazon Prime. I changed the passwords to everything that was solely mine. It was administrative, clinical. The emotional severance had already been done for me. As the first gray light of dawn filtered through the blinds, I wrote the note. I found a scrap of paper and a pen. No emotion, no recriminations, just facts. Qley, I've taken my half of the savings. My portion of the rent is paid through the end of the month. You can keep the deposit. Mark, I left it on the kitchen counter, next to the cake. I shouldered my duffel bag. It held everything that was truly mine. I took one last look around the tiny apartment that had been the center of my universe. It felt like a stage set after the play had ended. Empty, meaningless, waiting to be dismantled. I closed the door quietly behind me and slid the key into the mailbox. The morning air was cool and clean. I got into my car, the duffel bag on the passenger seat where the cake had been. I didn't look back. I drove to a cheap extended stay motel on the outskirts of the city I'd called home for years. It was a beige, boxy place that smelled of bleach and stale cigarettes. I paid for a week in cash. The room was a monument to anonymity. I sat on the edge of the stiff bed, the silence pressing in again. But this silence was different. It was mine. It wasn't the silence of her absence. It was the silence of her noise being finally, blessedly, gone. I called my boss at the law firm first thing, not to quit, but to explain I needed a personal week. He grumbled, but agreed. Then I called the bar. I quit. Family emergency. I said, the lie coming easily. The relief was immediate. One weight, gone. For the first 2 days, I did nothing. I slept for 14 hours straight. I ate gas station food. I stared at the textured ceiling. The grief was a quiet, internal tremor. It wasn't for her. The woman I loved had ceased to exist the moment she said, financially boring. This grief was for the 7 years I'd given to a ghost. For the future I'd painted in such vivid colors that now just looked like ash. On the 3rd day, I got in my car and just drove. No destination. I pointed the car west and followed the highway until the city sprawl gave way to rolling hills, then to dense, green forest. I rolled the windows down. The air smelled of pine and damp earth. It was a smell that had no association with her, with apartments, or with exhaustion. I stopped at a small-town diner for coffee. The guy at the counter was reading a real estate magazine. A listing was circled in red pen, secluded fixer-upper cabin. Privacy. Potential. The price was a number I could almost afford. The number I had in my bank account, to be exact. I drove out to see it. It was down a long, gravel driveway that seemed to swallow the world whole. The cabin was small, rustic, and desperately in need of work. The roof sagged a little. One window was boarded up, but it sat on 5 acres of quiet woods, and a creek burbled behind it. It was the exact opposite of financially boring. I called the number. I made an offer the next day, the down payment a direct transfer from the account that had once funded a dream of becoming a doctor's husband. Now it was funding my escape from one. I went back to the city, to my beige motel room, and gave my proper 2 weeks' notice at the law firm. I told them I was moving. I didn't say where. I packed my few belongings from the motel. As I drove out of the city for the last time, the skyline shrinking in my rearview mirror, I felt it. Not happiness, not yet. but something more fundamental, a profound, unshakable sense of peace. The silence in the car was no longer empty. It was full of possibility. The silence of the cabin was my new currency, and I was rich with it. My days fell into a new, purposeful rhythm. Mornings were for coffee on the rickety porch, listening to the wind in the pines. Days were spent patching the roof, replacing the rotten floorboards, and learning how to plumb a sink from YouTube videos. Evenings were for sore muscles, a simple meal, and a book. The world had shrunk to the size of my 5 acres, and I found I preferred it that way. My phone had 1 bar of service if I stood on a specific rock near the creek. I rarely stood on that rock. The first breach in the silence came 6 months in. A text from an unknown number. Unknown. Mark, it's Sarah. Qley's really upset. She didn't mean it. You know how she gets under stress. Dr. Evans is a jerk. Can you just call her? I read it once. The name Sarah evoked a memory of forced double dates and gossipy brunches. A flying monkey, sent by the Wicked Witch. I felt nothing. No anger, no curiosity. It was like getting a wrong number text about a missed delivery. I tapped block number and went back to sanding a doorframe. A month later, I was in town buying supplies, my phone buzzing in my pocket. I usually ignored it, but I was waiting for a call back from the lumberyard. I didn't recognize the number, but it had a city area code. I answered. There was no greeting, just the sound of ragged breathing, then a choked sob. It was her. Her voice was a distorted, watery version of the cool, clinical tone she'd used to dismantle me. Mark? Oh God, Mark. A sharp intake of breath. I made a huge mistake. I said nothing. I held the phone to my ear and watched an old man across the street meticulously load bags of mulch into his truck. Evans, he was using me. It was all a game to him. He's done this with other residents. The hospital found out. There was an investigation. Her words tumbled out. A chaotic jumble of self-pity and panic. I heard hostile work environment, unprofessional conduct, and my reputation. The lead weight of schadenfreude never materialized. I just felt a distant, academic interest in the mechanics of her downfall. Mark, I need you. You were always my rock. Please, can we just talk? The plea was so familiar, so scripted. It was the line she was supposed to say when the exciting, prestigious life blew up in her face. She expected the rock to still be there, waiting to be leaned on. I pulled the phone away from my ear, ended the call, and deleted the voicemail. I blocked the number. The entire interaction had taken less than 90 seconds. I bought my lumber and drove back to the woods. The peace waiting for me there was more real than her drama would ever be. The third attempt came a few weeks later. A different number. I was tired, covered in sawdust, and my guard was down. I answered without thinking. This time, there were no tears. Her voice was sharp, frayed with a wire of hysteria. Why won't you answer me? Do you have any idea what I'm going through? I remained silent, wiping my forehead with my arm. I could lose my license over this. The medical board is involved. I need your support. After everything I did for us. For our future. That last sentence, the sheer audacious rewrite of history, was the only thing that sparked a reaction. It wasn't anger. It was a cold, clear need to state a fact, just once. My voice was calm, flat, devoid of any emotion she could hook into. There is no us, Qley. You made that clear. I ended the call and blocked the third number. The silence that rushed back and felt cleaner, more absolute than before. A year to the day after I'd walked out of that apartment, a thick, expensive wedding invitation arrived at my P.O. box in town. Jake and Amelia. Good people. We'd been friends in college before my world had shrunk to the size of Qley's ambitions. I hadn't spoken to them in years. The invitation felt like a message in a bottle from a past life. After a week of deliberation, I RSVP'd yes. It was time. The wedding was a tasteful affair at a vineyard. I wore my one good suit and felt like an imposter for exactly 10 minutes. Then I saw Jake beam at Amelia, and the simple, honest joy of it washed away my unease. I was nursing a whiskey, content to be a spectator, when I felt a presence at my elbow. I turned. It was her. Qley looked like a photograph that had been left in the sun. Faded. The expensive dress was replaced by something off the rack. Her makeup couldn't hide the tired lines around her eyes. She held a glass of wine too tightly. Mark. She offered a fragile smile. You look good. I gave a slight, neutral nod. Qley. The silence stretched, becoming awkward. She rushed to fill it. I'm so sorry. About everything. It was all a mess. I was stupid. He love-bombed me, and then it was a nightmare. Her words were well rehearsed. I lost everything. I took a slow sip of my whiskey, saying nothing. I just waited. She floundered under the weight of my silence. Aren't you going to say anything? I said I'm sorry. I need you. We had a plan. We can still have that life. I finally looked at her, really looked. I saw the desperation, the fear, the crumbling entitlement. And I felt nothing but a vast, unbridgeable distance. That life, I said, my tone conversational, as if discussing the weather, was built on my exhaustion, Qley. This one is built on my peace. She blinked, confused by the vocabulary. Peace wasn't a metric she understood. I bought a cabin. I continued, gesturing vaguely toward the window and the hills beyond. I spend my weekends fixing it up. There's no reception. It's quiet. Her face tightened. This wasn't the script. I was supposed to either forgive her or yell at her. My calm detachment was a language she didn't speak. What happened with you and your job? That's a professional matter. It has nothing to do with me. The carefully constructed dam of her composure broke. Her voice rose, sharp and shrill, cutting through the soft murmur of the reception. Nothing to do with you? We were together for 7 years. How can you be so cold? I looked at her then, not with anger, but with a final, profound clarity. She hadn't reached out because she missed me. She'd reached out because the life she'd traded me for had exploded, and she was scrambling for the safety she'd so arrogantly dismissed. A small, calm smile touched my lips, one that didn't reach my eyes. It wasn't a smile for her. It was a smile for myself, for the man who had finally understood. You ended that. The day you graduated. You were very clear. My voice was soft but absolute, a door closing with a final, quiet click. You said you'd outgrown me. I paused, letting the memory of her own cruel words hang in the air between us. It turns out you were right. I finished my whiskey and set the empty glass on a passing tray. It was the most truthful thing you ever said to me. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I gave her one last, dismissive glance. I hope you figure your situation out. Excuse me. I turned and walked away, melting into the crowd of laughing, dancing guests. I didn't look back. I felt the warmth of the sun on my face through the large windows. I thought about my cabin, waiting for me in the quiet woods. I thought about the new front door I was going to hang next weekend. A real, solid piece of oak. I was already home. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.